What is up, everyone? Your friendly neighborhood onesie guy here, and today we're going to look at the top 15 cards, in my opinion, for the upcoming Festival of Legends expansion, which will drop later today. So I've had a little bit of time to play around with some of these cards in duels, as those were released early through bucket systems. So I've got some experience with these cards, but I'm definitely looking forward to a lot of the other ones that I haven't yet tried. Now, before we get into the cards, I just want to make a quick announcement. I have created a second YouTube channel, Onesie Guy Unplugged. You can have a look at that in the description down below. I'll drop the link there. And there I'll be uploading a variety of non-gaming content. So my movie reviews, my trailer reactions will be moving all over to there, as well as my personal blogs and something new that I'm going to be starting, which is going to be called Story Time, where I basically read short stories to you and you can sit back and relax and just listen. So basically just audiobooks of short stories. So if any of those things interest you, you can go ahead and take a look at that. I will be uploading a lot of content there over the next coming weeks. So yeah, now that that is out of the way, let's get into the cards. So first up here, we're going big with the signature Warlock spell, Symphony of Sins. This is a 6-mana spell, and it says, discover and play a movement, shuffle the other 6 into your deck. Now you see where we have 7 movement spells, or movement cards I should say. Movement of Greed, which draws you 6 cards. Movement of Envy, which is remove the top 6 cards of your opponent's deck. Then we have a Movement of Pride, to draw the highest cost minion, reduce it by 6. Movement of Gluttony, give a random minion in your hand, deck and battlefield +6/+6. Board Doomlord, which is the only minion in this package, which is a 6-mana 6/6 with Taunt and Reborn, so that is very interesting there. Movement of Sloth, summon a 6/6 demon with Taunt and Reborn. You'll basically be summoning the Board Doomlord with that spell, so you could be getting a little bit cheaper stuff there going on. Deal 6 damage to all characters, which is Movement of Wrath, and Movement of Desire. Lifesteal deals 6 damage to the enemy hero, which I think is pretty powerful. Now, all these movement cards I think are very cool. Some of them, you know, will be more situational than others, but this does give you a nice variety of options and also value, and I am a big fan of value. So most of the movement cards, as you can see, at least the spells, are all 3-mana spells. So the only card that's actually going to cost you 6 mana to play is the Board Doomlord. So most of the time I would suppose that when you discover and play, you would go for the Board Doomlord off the bat, because that will give you the most value. You're playing a 6-mana card, you're getting a 6/6 with Reborn, unless you do need something else, unless you need card draw, unless you need healing or lethal potential. So this can give you a variety of options based on the situation you're in. So I think this is going to be a very powerful card, especially if there's some way to copy a spell in your hand. This can definitely cause a lot of things. Also, it does dilute your deck a little bit, so if you are going for specific plays and specific combos, you may not draw those cards, so it does give a bit of a downside there. But overall, I think the value of this card alone just outweighs the potential downsides. Next up, we have the 3-mana signature spell for Paladin called Starlight Groove, and this says, give your hero Divine Shield for the rest of the game. Playing a holy spell refreshes that. So this is the first time in Hearthstone history that we can actually give a character, your hero, Divine Shield. Holy Paladin, there's been a lot of Holy Paladin builds in the past, so I'm sure this is going to slot right into a Holy build somewhere along the line. And giving your hero Divine Shield not just once off, but every time you play a Holy spell is pretty cool, because I mean that can negate 1 damage, but it can also negate 10 damage, can negate 20 damage of one shot, depending on what your opponent has. So I think this is very powerful, especially at a low 3 cost. You can play this early in the game and start negating damage pretty soon. Also, this is something nice that you could probably steal off someone. If you get a copy or copy this, it's kind of perfect. So this lasts the entire game. Yeah, I think this is just going to be a very powerful spell. Also like the flavor, Kangor with the with his hammer jamming along there. The entire look of this is really, say, 70s disco kind of themed, which I really love. And yeah, just overall, this card I just think is pretty good, especially according to a lot of the signature spells are going. This is definitely one of the strongest there. And speaking of Kangor, next up we have Kangor the Dancing King, a 5-mana 3/3 minion for Paladin. Lifesteal, Death Rattle, swap this with a minion from your hand and give it lifesteal. So this is possibly an infinite generation card. So if you're playing, I've seen some people in the theory crafting using this and playing a big Paladin deck where you're pulling big minions from your hand, giving them lifesteal, and then this jumps back to your hand. You know, it can give you a chance to play it again and again and again. However, sometimes you might want to skip a turn, you play something else. If you're putting this as well, trying to factor this maybe with the signature spell, giving your hero Divine Shield, you might want to be looking at that. However, I think all around this card is quite powerful for a couple of turns maybe. After that, you may want to do something else. And especially at the 5-mana point, it can still be very useful in the mid-game. The only problem with this is killing off Kangor. He does not have Rush, so trying to actually kill him off may be difficult. Your opponent may just avoid killing it or play minions that are not big enough to kill him off, so you're not getting that immediate value. But we'll definitely see how he works out. He definitely has the potential to be very powerful, and that's why I've put him on my list of favorite cards. Also, again, I love cards that add extra value, and this is definitely a value-driven card, having him played over and over again, and just kind of infinite looping until you have basically no minions left in your hand. Next up, we have the Priest signature spell, Love Everlasting, a 3-mana holy spell. Your first spell each turn costs 2 less, lasts until you don't play a spell on your turn. Now, Priest definitely has the potential to consistently play spells every single turn, especially with a 2-mana cost reduction. So I can definitely see this being played on turn 2 or turn 3, and they're just continuously being generated throughout the game until the end of the game. I don't think Priest will have a problem with that. This coupled in with some new stuff coming in, which is the Overheal keyword for Priest, I definitely think that you're going to have a heal Priest coming in and playing a lot of healing spells, as well as the next card we're going to look at does filter into that. Having something with Overheal on board, healing it up, damaging it once again, and then healing it again, and getting double benefit on that Overheal ability could be something extremely powerful for Priest. So the Overheal keyword might be overlooked right now as we're seeing it now, but I definitely think it has the potential to have something big, and this reducing your spells for the rest of the game by 2, and not just a particular spell school but all the spells you play, is definitely going to be something I'm keeping my eye on. I also love the whole, you know, feel of the card. Love Everlasting is this very hippie kind of jam card. So yeah, everything about this card I just think is really cool, and I think this is going to make Priest probably top tier in my opinion, this incorporated with the Overheal mechanic. And like I said, with that Overheal mechanic, we have our next card, which is a Priest location, 1-mana location fan club, restore 3 health to all friendly characters. Now, Obviously, this can only be used twice and every other turn. However, sometimes 3 health is all you need on your hero to get yourself out of a sticky situation and survive that extra turn in order to win the game. Additionally, this can be played out turn 1 not used. You're playing a bunch of overheal cards and you just go out with maybe crazy damage, crazy effects, whatever the case may be, healing up things across the board. So you can have maybe 2 or 3 overheal cards, you heal them up as you play them, deal damage to them, heal them up again with the spells like I was talking about previously, and you can get those synergies going off once, twice, 3 times in a turn, which can sometimes possibly lead to some lethal damage. So I think in combination with our previous spell Love Everlasting and the overheal mechanic, this card is definitely going to be a staple in Priest, or especially Overheal Priest, and it has the potential to do a lot of damage and the potential to, like I said, put Priest at a tier 1 deck. Now let's take a look at a very interesting rogue spell, Breakdance. Return a friendly minion to your hand, summon a dancer with its stats, and rush. So basically this is a shadow step, however it doesn't give you the discount and it is costing 1 mana and not 0, but it does give you an additional body on board, whereas obviously shadow step took that body and didn't give you anything immediately. This can be played obviously on low cost cards just to have an extra body on board. It can be played on higher powered cards to get those effects again, and you can still go ahead and have a big body with rush on board. Sometimes you just need a rush minion to clear something off to help clear a board. So I think this has definitely got the potential to be a very powerful card. Rogue does love bouncing cards, so replaying cards from other classes, this could be another integral card in the Thief Rogue package, which I'm sure is still going to be one of the staple packages or one of the staple archetypes. So we'll just go ahead and see how this works out. But from what I've seen in the theory crafting decks and some of the stuff I've tried in duels, this card is definitely very powerful and can definitely have some board swinging potential. Then we have possibly my favorite card in terms of just flavor, MC Blingtron, which is a 5 mana 3/4 mech for Rogue. And the battle cry, both players equip 1/2 microphones. Your opponents increase all their damage taken by 1. As you can see here, broken microphone goes to your opponent, golden microphone goes to you. Now there's a number of cool uses for this. The body itself doesn't have very big stats, but the effect I think outweighs that and gives us a great boost. So not only is your opponent now going to take 1 additional damage each time they take damage, it can also be a source of weapon removal for your opponent. So your opponent's got a powerful weapon that, you know, does something incredible each turn, or just has a lot of damage. You can get rid of that. And this is not only a card that I can see being played for standard wise. I mean, for duels, we are having stuff shifting over, but you know, if we had had this in the previous rotation, this would have been one heck of a big counter to Carriel. You know, taking that weapon away and then giving extra damage. Now, this weapon does have 1 attack, so your opponent can attack with it to get rid of the weapon. But those 2 turns that this weapon is going to be possibly up, could just give you the edge on dishing out damage. Rogue does notorious have a lot of cheap spells that do little bits of chip damage. If you've got a lot of minions on board, that can also push an extra damage each time. That could make or break a game. You could just outright win by using the broken microphone in those 2 turns, and there's not a lot of ways your opponent can stop that. So I do see this card being a very disrupting card, but also possibly a way to end the game once you've built up a lot of cheap spells or stolen spells, even discounted spells in your hand, and then you just, you know, put this down and then just burst out a lot of damage over a turn or 2 and hit lethal. So I just love the potential of this card, the look of this card, the flavor of this card, everything. This is probably my favorite card of the expansion. And still sticking with Rogue, we're looking at their signature spell here, a 3-mana spell, bounce around featuring Corona, return all friendly minions to your hand, they cost 1 this turn. So definitely works well in a battlecry situation, or just a situation where you have some taunts that may be on low health, or big minions that may be on low health. You bring them back to your hand, possibly an empty hand, and you just play this. So this is most likely going to be the most useful in a late game situation, but there are definitely some uses earlier game where you can go ahead and play stuff out. I mean, you can use this to play MC Blingtron out again, refreshing that weapon and dealing additional damage along the way. So I don't see a downside really to this card. The only problem is maybe your hand size, but the Rogue is also good with getting rid of cards very quickly. Like I said, a lot of low-cost spells, a lot of low-cost minions that you can just burn your hand out, get those minions back, and those minions possibly generating you even more burn resources, causing you to quickly burn your competition down, no pun intended. But it can also give a great swing and just provide a lot of additional board presence for you. So I really think this is a very powerful spell. The signature spells so far have been really great. Some of them I feel like they are on the lacking side, but this one definitely not. Next up, we have another signature spell, this time the Death Knight one. A very interesting spell because this requires you to have basically a full spell type deck. So you have to have a blood, frost, and undead spell schools in your deck for this. So it's lifesteal, deal 5 damage, summon 2/1 souls, randomly improved by corpses you've spent. So I'm not exactly sure what part of this is actually going to be improved, the damage dealt or the number of souls you summon. I assume there's 3 things that can be improved here: the damage you dealt, the number of souls, and the attack of the souls themselves. So obviously the number of souls summoned is most likely going to only reach a potential of 7. The other 2, I don't know what will actually happen to them. And like it says, it's randomly going to be improved. So you have no control over what is improved here. It is definitely a late game card. There are 2 issues that I have with this card, or I see as potential issues. So having all 3 types in your deck does limit what your kind of potential combos and stuff can do. However, you do have a lot of discover cards that can discover you the other resources you may need. There has been a lot of other stuff coming into Death Knight with this expansion that can help with this deck build and this kind of all-round archetype as well. The other potential problem I see with this spell is the 10 mana cost may be too slow for the current metagame, which tends to be a lot quicker. So by the time you get to 10 mana, will you have spent enough corpses to make this card valuable? Because on face value, 10 mana summoning 2 1/1 souls isn't great. Should you have already spent 10 corpses by this time, we don't even know by that time what is actually going to happen, what kind of card you're going to get, and what you're actually going to need in that situation. But I have put this on this list because it does have the potential to be game swinging with just 1 spell. If this is discovered off anything that reduces spell cost, you can get this for cheaper. Again, this it says randomly improved by corpses you spent, so I'm assuming that even if you spend corpses without this in your deck and you discover this later on, it will still gain improvements. I've yet to see that happen, so we'll just have to wait and see on that. I just love the art of this as well. It's also another reason it's here, but the main reason is that this has a very high ceiling for what it can do, and I love cards like that. It can just kind of go crazy. Most of the time it won't, but it does have that potential, and I love trying to play cards that has that high ceiling potential just for crazy board swings, crazy shenanigans, and just makes for all-round fun game because you kind of don't know what's going to happen. So this card is here just all in the name of fun. Moving on to neutral cards, we have here Paparazzi, Battlecry, discover a legendary minion. Now, with some cards being phased out, obviously with the set rotation, as well as the core set being changed out, currently this is going to have a limited pool of minions that you can discover. I have played this card in duels, and in duels it has felt very, very powerful. For 3 mana, 3/4 baseline stats is decent, and just getting that potential to discover a legendary minion which can swing the board and swing the game. Again, it's a lot of value that it can generate, and also it has a lot of potential. Now, like I said, I love cards with potential, just because, you know, it's kind of a bit of a dice roll, but I like to see what the best it can do. So I'm excited to see how this falls out in standard. Like I said, I have played it in duels. It was really fun there. We'll see what it can do in standard now, especially currently with the more limited pools of what legendaries you can discover. Then we have Annoying Fan, a 1 mana 1/2 mech. Battlecry, choose a minion. It can't attack while this is alive. And yes, this card can be extremely annoying, as the name says. While playing this card, I have come across putting this behind taunts, giving this divine shield, and basically having very limited ways of attacking this card. And if this card blocks one of your stronger minions, or a minion that would possibly win you the game, it can be very annoying. If you're playing a very minion based deck and you don't have any spells to directly target it, it can be very annoying. Additionally, you're playing this in Death Knight, you play the spell that gives your cards immunity from being able to be targeted by spells, and then this card just becomes even worse, because then even if you have targeting spells, you can't target it. So I see a lot of disruption potential with this card. Maybe you don't run this in a lot of decks, this more as a tech card than anything else. But like I said, I love the flavor of this card, and I've seen what it potentially can do. It potentially can just frustrate and piss people off, and sometimes that can be fun just to annoy people, as the card says, Annoying Fan. So yeah, this I can see being slotted into a number of decks, especially menagerie decks, at a very low cost, and it can potentially be extremely powerful. Then we have the Mish-mash Mosher, an 8 mana 3/10 undead. After this attacks, gain 1 attack and attack a random enemy minion. The way I read this card is basically every time it attacks, it's going to gain 1 attack and attack again. So after your first attack, once you play this card, it's going to hit into something and then just chain off that. So potentially this has the power to clear a small board. If this has been buffed in your hand or your deck and it already has more than that 3 attack value, you can have an even bigger board clearing potential. So this again has the power to be quite strong. It can definitely help for decks that generally don't have the board clear potential to have board clear potential. We know a lot of decks like Warrior and Warlock and stuff do have wide board things, especially also Mage. But there are some classes that don't really have those specific cards that are able to clear a medium, small, medium, even large board in the game. However, the problem here is it is an 8 mana cost card. It might come down too late. There are ways to tutor cards out of your deck, especially with undead, summoning undeads from your deck, etc. Also, this can be discovered off cards that discover you an undead and possibly be discounted as well. So there's a lot of ways that this can either get cheaper or get more powerful before you play it, making this card, again, a very potentially high value card. And again, that's what I'm looking for, value and fun. Just seeing this going crazy, attacking an entire board. Definitely want to hear what the voice line is when this thing attacks, because I can just imagine it's something really crazy. Seeing he is moshing, so something really out there, and punk rock or heavy metal, just going crazy on your opponent's board. So yeah, I can definitely see this card finding a place. Will it be widely played? I don't think so, but I still think it will be really fun to see what it can do. Then we have Stereo Totem, a 2-mana 0/3 totem. At the end of your turn, give a random minion in your hand +2/+2. I've played this card in duels. It has the potential to be very powerful, especially when it's hidden behind a taunt. Sometimes you can give this minion stealth in some ways, give it divine shield, and then it becomes something of a great value generator. Especially early on, you're playing this, the 3 health does mean that a lot of the time your opponent's not going to be able to deal with it on turn 2. If you're on coin and you coin this out on turn 1, it's perfect as well, because you can really start generating value from this card. And because it is a neutral totem, this also fits very well into menagerie decks. So not only now you see we've got mechs, we've got dragons, we've got totems, we've got undead, we've got demons, we've got so many things. So I think this might find a place in the menagerie deck. It also might find a place in certain handbuff decks that don't require your deck to be a specific type or a specific class of cards. So personally, this is giving me a lot of value when playing in duels, and I think definitely in standard it's going to be a very big value driven card. As always, I love value. Next up, Audio Amplifier, a 2-mana 2/3 mech. Set your maximum mana and hand size to 11. Again, I've gotten a chance to play this card. I very much like the effect. I also like the sounds it makes. The audio with this card is really great. When you play it, it's amped up. I think when it attacks, it says turn it up, amp it up by 1 or turn it up, and it's a really cool card to play. Additionally, it just gives you a lot of value. More so in-game value, but value nonetheless. And at 2-mana 2/3, base stats aren't bad. And as a battle cry, goes off once. You don't need this card again. And you permanently have that effect going for you. And with Druid having a lot of stuff taken away from it, we can definitely say that this will fit well into Druid, as Druid likes gaining a lot of mana. There are some other things like your rogue weapon that with combo cards gives you the death rattle of refreshing mana crystals. So say you've already played this, you're on 11 mana and 11 cards in your hand, so you've got plenty of cards to play. You're playing some combo cards, playing some other stuff. Boom, you use your weapon, use this death rattle, you refresh yourself back up to 11 mana, and then you've got a whole new turn basically to just dish out a lot of stuff. So a very, very powerful card in my opinion. And I've seen it work. It is definitely a powerful card. How it's going to be used in Hearthstone currently, I'm not sure. But you're definitely going to get a lot of decks, especially the spell-focused decks, I think, are going to make great use of this card. And last but not least, we have Photographer Fizzle. Battlecry, take a snapshot of your current hand and shuffle it into your deck. That is then converted to the spell Fizzle Snapshot. Add the snapshot cards to your hand. Now, this is not a cast on drawn card, so you won't have to worry about hand space issues. Drawing this card will just have a 2-mana spell in your hand, and with the combination with the previous card, increasing your hand size by 1 can be very great, especially with this. If you've got some powerful combo cards or some powerful spells at low costs and you just want to play this and you rip those off again. Just using again the example of Rogue gaining mana back, this would fit perfectly into that package. You've played out everything that you needed to play with the snapshot. Then you play the snapshot, get a whole bunch of stuff back into your hand, play those out, and potentially lethal power. So I think this card, especially in combination with the previous one, is definitely going to be a very powerful card. And the fact that the snapshot is not a cast on drawn, I think is more of a good thing than a bad thing, more of a pro than a con, because it basically gives you the opportunity and the choice of when you want those cards back in your hand, so your hand is not too full, and you get them when you need them. So I think this card is definitely going to be a meta defining card. I could be very wrong there, but in my opinion it's going to be. So there we go, that's my top 15 cards for the Festival of Legends expansion, dropping later today. What are your guys' thoughts on the new cards? What is your favorite card? Comment down below if you like any of these, if you have a different opinion to any of them. And yeah, hopefully all of you are looking forward to the expansion dropping later. Again, I certainly am. I possibly might stream it, even though I'm not going to have many of the new cards. But it's still good to fun to see what kind of decks people come up with on day one. So yeah, thank you very much, guys, for watching this video. I hope you guys have a fantastic day further. Wherever you're watching this from, I wish you a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. And as always, let that geek flag fly.